Hi, I'm Katie, and today I will be teaching you to embellish your cross stitch with a wonderful specialty thread called silk wrapped Gimp. First, I will be explaining some of the different types of silk wrapped Gimp, which I have here, the colors they're available with, and then we'll get into the actual how-to of embellishing your cross stitch using my stitch of Harrietta and Company by Needle and Thread, and doing the little bow at the bunny's neck with the silk wrapped Gimp. But before I get to that, I'm going to talk a little bit about the different types of silk wrapped Gimp and the color families in which they're available. So for Harrietta and Company, I've used 3 different colorways from the Cabinet of Curiosities historic color family, which if you're a Thistle Threads student, you already know all about. For those of you who don't, I'm going to give a quick rundown, and I will note I will also put a timestamp of where the actual how-to on the silk wrap Gimp starts in the description so that you can skip ahead to it if you already know all about this thread. So the Cabinet of Curiosities historic color family is a range of colors that closely approximate what was available and stitched with in the 17th century across different color families. And in each color family, you have a range of threads available. So here in Harrietta and Company, I've used 3 of the blues from the historic color family. I've also used 2 of the pinks. Here in the center are the 2 Goblins colors I used, and then this right here is a sample red-pink color family pack from Thistle Threads, and then these are shown with their corresponding Gimps, and then also one of the browns from the warm brown color family. So it's a wonderful thing to explore if you're interested in widening your stash into specialty threads, because the great thing about the historic color family is that for each of these families, you not only have a range of silk filament threads, you have Goblins, Paris, Oval, and Perle, which we'll talk about in my coming specialty thread tutorial. You also have complementary really specialty threads in all of those colors. So for each of the 3 blues I used here, there's also a regular silk wrapped Gimp, which is a beautiful fine silk wrap around a core thread that gives you this nice textured smooth thread. There is also double twist Gimp, which is a crinkly, much more textured Gimp. And you can see that in action here on my Britomart lid panel. So the tree trunk here is worked with silk wrapped Gimp alternating with double twist Gimp. So that should give you a good look at the different textures that you can get with the 2 different types of Gimp. And then there's also one more really useful kind of silk wrapped Gimp that's available to you, and that is the recently come back into stock. This was not available for a long time. Striped silk Gimp, and these are great because they are they can be used in place of striped twine, which is frequently found on cross-stitch finishes. So here is Peppermint and Holly, which has had striped baker's twine put around the edge and then a double bow, or she's done a double bow on Candy Cane Wishes. It doesn't come in a red and white stripe, but it does come in some other lovely ones. You could, for example, use this, which is very spring, for Harrietta and Company, in place anywhere where you would want to put a thin thread and a bow. I will put links in the description to where you can purchase all of these threads. I usually buy them from Thistle Threads or Needle in a Haystack. But with that, let's get back to Harrietta and Company and using silk wrapped Gimp. So today I'm going to use this medium blue which is the middle value blue that I used on Harrietta and Company, and I'm going to use that to make the neck bow here for the bunny. So I'm gonna do this in 2 pieces, and the first one will be plunging the thread through, and then I will tack a bow on top of that. So to plunge it, I need to get this through the fabric. And Silk Rack Gimp, so I'm gonna unspool this just a little bit, is a flat filament silk that's wrapped around a core thread, and that's what gives you the texture here. And you can damage this with too much handling or use. So you have to be sure, if you're plunging it through the fabric, to use a thick enough needle. For today, I am going to use a number 20 chenille. If I were using the double twist Gimp, which is a little thicker, I would use a number 18 chenille to go through it. So Harrietta and Company is ready for finishing. It's already been backed, it's been embellished, and then the last thing I need to do for this is to add the little bow. So I'm gonna clip this end to get a neat end to start with. I'm going to thread it into my large chenille needle. This is larger than the Gimp, but the very large eye here reduces the drag on the thread and minimizes the damage to it when it passes through the linen. And then I'm just going to take that right through the fabric. You can see how easily that slides through. And then I also am going to want to secure this on the back, and for that I'm going to use a very fine thread, also from the Cabinet of Curiosities color family. This is called Silk Trim, but you can use any fine couching thread that you would otherwise use for detail work. So here I've got Kinkame, which I also use. Basically anything that you like that can tack down the thread. And then I am going to use a number 10 milliner's needle, and I'm going to double this thread up because it's very fine. And I'm just going to secure this plunged end here on the back. I'm going to tack it down lightly so that it's not coming loose and that it's not flopping around on the back when I go to finish this thing. So I'm just gonna take a few stitches over it, making sure that my stitches don't go all the way through to the front. You don't wanna see them. This is just solely to secure this thread on the back, and then I'm going to plunge the other side. So I'm going to cut a little bit longer length than I need. Rethread it again with my number 20 chenille needle, and then take it through at the other side of the neck. And then pull that neatly through, as you can see here. And then I'm going to repeat the process and just lightly tack this down with a whip stitch. So that my Gimp is secured on the back. That's satisfactory, so then I'm going to clip my extra Gimp, and now I am ready to put the bow on the front. Oh, and it's popped up a little bit. I guess I didn't pull this through as much as I would like. So what I'm actually gonna do is then take my needle, which is still threaded, and take one tacking stitch here to secure it. And this is where the bow is gonna go. That looks much better. So now I'm going to add the bow. So I'm gonna bring my thread back up here, and I am not going to actually tie a bow with the silk wrapped gimp. You could, but thread can be damaged by too much handling, and I honestly find it easier to do the illusion of a bow. So I've cut a length of silk wrapped gimp, I've laid it flat across the neck and the attachment point, and then I'm going to take a single tacking stitch across it, which will form the base of the bow, and then I'm going to do one more and take my needle through the center of the gimp, splitting it so that it can't move on me later. So that's secured it, and then I am going to just form a loop and repeat the same process of tacking it down and then taking another stitch through the gimp itself so that this can't pull loose later. And then I'm going to repeat this on the other side. And if you were feeling very overachieving, you could also just loop, you could plunge a little piece of gimp over your stitches right here to give the illusion of a knot. But this looks pretty good to me, so I'm going to just leave that as it is. I am now going to end my thread and come back to you to talk about how we finish off these free ends. Now, silk wrapped gimp, because this is just wrapped around a core thread, needs to be secured at the end if you do have a cut end. And I'm going to do that with glue. You can use either tacky glue or Jade 403 PVA. I'm going to use the PVA because it's archival grade. But one thing to remember is that this is silk, and glue, no matter which one you use, will stain it. So use a very, very light hand, and you're just going to want to put just a little bit at the edge where you're going to make the cut. And I'm going to protect my stitching by just putting a little piece of parchment paper in between the stitching and the place where I'm gluing. And then I'm going to take a toothpick, put just a little bit of glue on the tip, and then I am going to just dab it all around the edge of the silk wrapped gimp where I plan to make my cut. Like so. So I'm going to do this on both threads and then let that dry. So for tacky glue or PVA, that's not very long. You don't need to give it more than 15 minutes, maybe half an hour. So I'll do that, let it dry, and then come back to you and we'll clip this. So I have let the glue dry and it's now ready to cut. You can tell the cut points because it has slightly darkened the silk, but it's no longer white, which means it's dry. And then I'm just going to clip right through them, and that secures the ends, which would otherwise be inclined to ravel. That's why you always need to glue. And then you can also, if you want to be extra careful, dab just an extra little piece of glue right on that cut end just to secure it a little more, which I think I probably will do here because Harriet and Company is going to be finished as a pillow, so I want this to be very stable and secure so that it can be turned and stuffed. So that's the tutorial on using silk wrap Gimp to embellish your cross stitch, which I hope you found helpful. Basically, it can be used to add color and texture any place where you'd like a little accent, like the bow on a bunny or anywhere where you would like some extra detail. There are thicker and more interesting Gimps like silk satiné Gimp, silk rococo Gimp, and silk serpentine Gimp, which can be really useful for adding a little extra jazz to your finishing, but we'll get to that later in another tutorial. Until then, happy stitching.